Hey everyone, welcome back to the kitchen. Today we're making a smoked chicken pot pie with a golden crust you'll want to see sliced open at the end. We start by pouring some vegetable oil into the pan. A piece of butter goes in next, and I swirl it around until it melts down into the oil. The oil keeps the butter from burning at higher heat, while the butter brings the kind of rich, nutty flavor that a pot pie filling is really built on. First vegetable on the board, the onion. I chop it down nice and fine, because in a pot pie, you want the onion to dissolve into the sauce and sweeten it from the inside, not show up as big, slippery pieces in every forkful. Quick word of advice while the tears start rolling. Keep your knife sharp for this job, since a dull blade crushes the onion instead of slicing through it, and crushed cells release way more of the fumes that sting your eyes and slow you down. The chopped onion slides into the warm butter and oil, and I stir it through with a spoon. That first soft sizzle is one of my favorite sounds in cooking. It means the pan is at the right temperature and the base of our filling is officially underway. Next comes the carrot, which I slice into half moons across the whole length. My grandpa grew carrots in his backyard when I was a kid, and he'd pull one straight out of the dirt, wipe it on his sleeve, and hand it over like it was candy. Honestly, those were sweeter than half the desserts I've had since. Half moons are the right call for a pot pie, because they're thick enough to keep a little bite after baking, so you get real pieces of vegetable in the filling instead of mush that disappears into the sauce. The carrots go into the pan, and I stir them right through the onions so every piece gets coated in that warm butter, and the two vegetables cook along at the same pace. Now for the garlic. 4 whole heads of it, all peeled and chopped down fine. And before anyone types it, yes, heads, because slow cooking turns every bit of that garlic mellow and sweet, so it melts into the sauce as a deep background flavor, instead of hitting you over the head. Chopping this much takes a while, so here's my first question for you today. How do you feel about garlic in your house? Are you the type who doubles whatever the recipe says, or do you keep it to a polite clove or two? I grew up in a double-it family, and I'd love to know which camp you're in. So scroll down and tell me in the comments while I finish this pile. All that garlic goes into the pan, and I stir it through the vegetables right away, since garlic only needs a short head start to turn fragrant, and it will flavor every layer we build on top of it. Now, mushroom time. I split each mushroom in half, then cut those halves down into slices. Here's the kitchen science worth knowing. Mushrooms are mostly water by weight, and until that water cooks off, they steam instead of browning. Slicing them like this gives you more surface area touching the hot pan, which means the moisture escapes faster and the flavor concentrates. So you end up with savory golden pieces in the pie instead of pale rubbery ones floating in the sauce. The mushrooms go into the pan, and I fold them through the rest of the vegetables. Listen close to how the sizzle quiets down for a minute. That's their water hitting the heat, and then builds right back up as it steams itself away. The smell changes too, from raw and earthy to something deep and almost meaty, which is exactly the note this pie needs before the chicken shows up. A few grinds of pink salt go right over the pan. Salting the vegetables now, while they cook, draws out their moisture and seasons every layer from the inside, which always beats trying to rescue a bland filling at the very end. Black pepper comes next, cracked straight from the grinder over the pan, and I work it through with a good stir. Cracking it fresh over the heat matters, because the aroma of pepper lives in oils that start fading from the moment the corns are broken open. Grind it here, and those oils bloom right into the warm butter, spreading themselves through the filling instead of sitting on top of it like dust from a shaker. And now, the star of this pie, a whole smoked chicken breast. I pull off the skin, work the meat away from the bone, and cut the meat down into hearty cubes. Using smoked chicken here is the move that changes everything, because the meat is already cooked and packed with flavor, so it only needs to warm through and share that smokiness with the sauce. My dad kept an old smoker behind the garage, and Saturday chicken out of that thing was a neighborhood event. People would slow down on the sidewalk just to figure out where the smell was coming from, and half the time they'd end up staying for dinner. Every time I open a package of smoked chicken, I'm 10 years old again standing next to that smoker. If you can't find smoked breast at your store, a rotisserie chicken will step in without missing a beat. You lose a little of the smoke, but you keep the tender, ready-to-go meat that makes this pie such an easy win on a weeknight. The chicken cubes go into the pan, and I stir them down through the vegetables until every cube finds its spot. Right away, the smoke starts waking up in the heat, drifting off the pan and mixing with the garlic and mushrooms. One of those smells that tells you this filling is going somewhere good. A sprinkle of Italian herbs goes over the top, bringing in that classic oregano and basil note. Now a pinch of saffron, which I stir through the whole pan. This is the most expensive spice on the planet. Every thread is picked by hand from the center of a crocus flower. But a little goes a long way, staining the filling a warm gold and adding a floral note that you simply can't fake with any other spice on the shelf. 2 tablespoons of flour go into the pan next, and I keep stirring until it coats every piece in the pan and disappears. This is the thickening engine of the whole pie. The flour toasts in the butter for a minute, losing its raw, pasty taste, and once liquid arrives, it will swell up and turn the juices into a proper sauce. Skip this step and you'd end up with soup leaking out of your crust, which is a heartbreak nobody deserves after all this chopping. Now the liquid, about 3/4 of a cup of chicken broth goes in. And here's the trick. I pour it in stages, stirring the whole time, so the toasted flour loosens up smoothly instead of seizing into lumps. Scrape the bottom of the pan as you go because all those browned bits from the vegetables and chicken dissolve into the liquid, and every bit of that is free flavor you already earned, going straight back into the sauce. Next, about 3/4 of a cup of cream, which I stir in until the whole pan turns a soft golden ivory, with the saffron glowing right through it. Watch the sauce thicken as it heats. It should coat the back of the spoon and settle slowly when you drag a path through the pan, which is exactly the kind of texture that holds up inside a baked crust. A few more grinds of pink salt go over the pan now, because the broth and cream just stretch the seasoning thinner, and this last layer brings the whole filling back into balance. One final round of black pepper, a good stir, and then the heat goes off, because this filling needs to cool down before it goes anywhere near the dough. This is the step people skip, and it costs them. Hot filling starts melting the butter inside short crust pastry on contact, and melted butter means the dough turns soft and greasy before the oven can set it. So instead of a crisp shell, you get a soggy bottom and a top that slumps into the middle. Give it time to come down to warm, and the crust will bake up with the structure it deserves. Patience here is the cheapest ingredient in the whole recipe. A good handful of flour goes down onto the counter, and I spread it around by hand so the dough won't grab onto the surface. Out comes the short crust dough, and I roll it into a thin round, working from the center outward and turning it as I go so it stays circular. While the rolling pin does its thing, here's my second question for you. What's the one pie that means home to you? The kind somebody in your family made so often you can still taste it from memory. Mine will always be chicken pot pie on cold nights. But I know plenty of you have an apple pie or a lemon meringue story worth telling. So head down to the comments and share it, because those answers are the best part of my week. The round of dough gets laid into the bottom of a glass baking dish, settled against the sides without stretching it, and then the filling comes in from the pan. Chicken, mushrooms, and that golden saffron sauce spread out across the base in one thick, generous layer that reaches every edge. The second round of dough goes over the top, and I press the edges together firmly all the way around. This seal is doing real work. It locks the steam and the sauce inside while the pie bakes, so the filling bubbles away in its own little chamber instead of leaking out the sides and burning on the dish. Take your time pressing, because one loose spot in the rim is all it takes for a river of sauce to find its way out and leave part of your pie standing empty. Now the finishing touch. I crack 2 eggs and separate the yolks from the whites. And for this job, we only want the yolks. The whites would bake into a thin, matte film, but yolks are loaded with fat and protein, which is what paints a deep golden shine onto pastry. That bakery window look that makes people reach for a slice before the pie even hits the table. Save the whites for tomorrow's breakfast, since nothing goes to waste around here. I take the whisk to the 2 yolks and beat them until they turn smooth and pourable, a shade lighter than when they started. Loosening them up like this matters because whole, thick yolk drags across dough and tears it, while the beaten yolk flows off the brush and lays down in a thin, workable coat that covers far more surface. With a brush, I paint the beaten yolk over the whole top, working it into every corner and along the sealed rim. Here's the science behind the shine. The proteins in the yolk brown fast in the oven's heat, the same reaction that colors a steak or toast, while the fat adds gloss, so the crust comes out lacquered and deep gold instead of pale and dusty. It's 30 seconds of work for a pie that looks professionally done. Last step before the oven? I cut slashes into the top, fanning them out from the center like rays of the sun. These aren't just for looks, and skipping them is a mistake that has ruined many a pie. The filling releases steam as it bubbles, and without an exit, that pressure builds under the lid until it finds its own way out, cracking the crust or turning the inside of the pastry damp and heavy. The cuts give the steam a clean escape, so the top bakes crisp while the filling stays put. With the sun drawn on and the vents open, the pie goes into the oven at 360 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes, until that yolk wash turns deep gold. While the pie bakes, I chop a handful of parsley fine, and that clean green smell is the perfect counterpoint to everything rich waiting in the oven. A pie like this really only asks for simple company at the table. A crisp green salad with a sharp dressing to cut through the cream, or just a cold drink and a quiet evening. Fresh parsley scattered over the hot crust at the end wakes the whole thing up, so having it chopped and ready before the timer rings is the smart play. Out of the oven it comes, glowing deep gold, and the parsley goes straight over that shiny crust. I cut out a triangle slice, and the knife tells the story. A crackle through the top crust, then that soft give as it reaches the filling, with a curl of smoky, saffron-scented steam rising up out of the cut the second the pieces separate. The slice comes out clean and lands on the plate, holding its shape wall to wall. Golden pastry on top, creamy filling loaded with chicken and mushrooms in the middle, and a crisp base underneath. One big bite, smoky, creamy, rich. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.